Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And here at the very beginning of the show, I think Joy has got some items for us.
It's not really news. I mean, I guess it's relatively new in the sense that it's happened, but I wouldn't say it's news. Courtney Love. We'll start with Courtney Love. This is just humorous to me, and I want to see what Tim has to say. So Courtney Love recently faced backlash after she branded Taylor Swift as unimportant. Courtney Love, of all people, who might be one of the most B-list celebrities.
Yeah, or C or D-list celebrity, probably.
Yeah, felt the need. Here was the exact quote. Taylor is not important. She might be a safe space for girls, and she's probably the Madonna of now, but she's not interesting as an artist. So that in and of itself contradicts herself. First of all, everybody's important. Second of all, being a safe space for girls is important, right, Tim?
Mm-hmm.
So just because you don't find her interesting doesn't negate the rest of the statement.
No, I mean, like, I've never heard any Taylor Swift music. I have no interest in the music of Taylor Swift. I have no interest in seeking out the music of Taylor Swift or getting into that world. However, she is a cultural phenomenon. She is the Michael Jackson Madonna of this generation. There are millions and millions of people who enjoy her music and everything she stands for. And then she is an important cultural icon and should be celebrated as such.
The other thing is like other artists, especially like people, Madonna's an exception because she's got a little bit of an attitude naturally. But generally, as an artist of an older generation, you want to support the newer generation artists. Like that's just commonplace.
Sure.
Like, and it's just her trying to stay relevant as this D-E-Z-Z, whatever you want to say. It cracked me up because I was like, Courtney Love of all people as the room to tell anyone I don't even think Courtney Love's unimportant, but you know what I mean, Tim? There's some irony in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, Courtney Love is only famous because she was married to Kurt Cobain. I mean, if she had not married to Kurt Cobain, nobody would know who Courtney Love is. I mean, she had that band Hole and they had a few singles, but it wasn't a big thing, really. No. And then her fame is through Kurt Cobain, 100%. And I don't know, just to like speak badly of Taylor Swift, I mean, you instantly turn millions of people against you.
Yeah, it's silly, but also like, it just like the irony, like I don't know how she can't see it in front of her face. It's like the pot calling the kettle, and it just cracked me up as soon as I saw that headline. I knew I wanted to talk about it. So this is ridiculous. And the other thing is the same people who always, go out and lamppost everybody are the ones that are irrelevant. And that's just, she knew by doing that she was going to get this headline. And here I am talking about it on the podcast because I fell for the bait in some weird way, but I had to.
Yeah. Paul McCartney isn't saying that. Dave Grohl is not saying that. Or people who continue
even
to have
Beyonce
this relevance.
Is not saying that. They keep their mouth shut.
Absolutely. It's just a ridiculous comment from Ms. Love.
Which she's notorious for, so I don't know why we expect any less. And with that irony, I'll let Tim take it from here.
Okay, so I've got two things for you. Okay. So firstly, this is the Spotify podcast because we often talk about the Spotify. Now I've embraced it.
We need them. If you guys are listening, Spotify, we will take the advertisement money if you have any.
Absolutely. I mean, we're on Spotify. We talk about it. Absolutely fantastic. But anyway, I had a journey. I'm embracing it. I really am super embracing it, apart from when I'm in the house. But Spotify. So a lot of the other streaming services, Tidal, being one of them, Qbuzz as another one, and Apple Music, all offer something that's called lossless audio. And what that means is that when back in the day when you ripped a CD to your computer, you ripped it as an MP3, and those files are compressed, meaning there are certain parts of the audio that the human ear can't hear. So it misses those bits out to make the file sizes very small. And at the time, to send files over the internet or store them on your computer, you needed the files to be smaller. So they made the MP3 part.
One of those sharing websites we won't give the name of,
Absolutely. So, there's been various versions of compressed audio. MP3 is probably the one that everyone has heard of. There's an Apple version and there's the version that Spotify used to stream and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, they are compressed, meaning that it's not the full file, it's been squashed down. And Apple Music and these other services offer lossless audio, which is meaning the files are not compressed. And in fact, some of these services offer fidelity, which is better supposedly than a compact disc. It actually exceeds that fidelity. Okay. However, as much as these services go on about how they have this lossless audio, most people cannot tell the difference. And in fact, you need to have special equipment typically to use the lossless piece. Of course. And if you use Bluetooth headphones, even if you have Apple's wireless what are those big headphones they call them? AirPod Maxes or whatever they are.
Something like that, yeah.
They use Bluetooth, and Bluetooth is a lossy way of sending audio wirelessly. So you're not even sending lossless to those very expensive Apple headsets. And anyone who has Bluetooth earphones, it's being sent lossy. You couldn't use lossless. So you either need wired headphones, you need an external digital to audio converter, you need a special something.
And whose phone actually has an actual jack on it anymore for an actual set of headphones?
Exactly. So for most people, you couldn't access it if you wanted to. And for the enthusiasts, unless you have amazing ears, it's very difficult to tell the difference. My hearing is okay for rock and roll destroyed ears, and I can hear between different qualities of sound, but I've done the ABX test between lossy and lossless, and I cannot hear the difference.
I probably wouldn't. I don't feel like I focus. It's interesting though, since I've done the podcast, things we've talked about in different songs I can hear now that I never heard before, but that's just me being conscious of it. But I can tell you right now, I'm terrible. Like, I'm not somebody who's like, I need to watch the 4K instead of the 3 or whatever. That doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah. So anyhow, Spotify has been under a lot of pressure to offer this lossless service. And they didn't. They said they were going to introduce it a few years ago. In 2021, in fact, they was going to do it. But so Apple beat them to the punch, so they decided not to do it. But apparently we are supposed to be getting a lossless tier to Spotify soon. And it's going to be called Music Pro.
All right, then.
And supposedly you're going to have to pay extra for it.
That's what I was going to ask. Let me guess. There's going to be more money.
Yeah. They haven't come out with a price yet, because what someone has done is the latest version of the Spotify app, they've decompiled it, looked at the source code, and seen in the source code there's a mention of Music Pro in there.
That makes sense.
But, Spotify is the leading streaming service. I would imagine 95% of the people who have it couldn't care less about lossless.
I'm not going to pay for more money to them for that.
And I mean, I've done I said ABX tests online, and I actually had a trial of Apple Music for a while, because I thought, well, am I missing out? Is Spotify really sound that bad? And I got a 3-month free trial with Apple Music, and I A/B'd the two on the same tracks. And to be honest with you, using my very fancy Audio-Technica wired headphones, I actually preferred the sound of Spotify.
Fair enough. I mean, it's just such a niche thing that I can't imagine the market is that big.
Well, it's. I don't think it's something that people necessarily want. It's something people think they want. And at that point, it becomes a marketing tactic.
Yeah, and I could understand there's going to be a set of people who want to, I don't want to say that they have I don't want to say they're like music snobs or you know what I mean, perfectionists in the music world, but they'll feel really cool saying I have this. Yeah. Whereas for me, I'm like, whatever.
They're known in the trade as cork sniffers.
Okay. Those ones.
Have you ever heard that expression before, a cork sniffer?
Can't say I have, Tim.
Maybe it's a British expression, because when they talk about guitar equipment, it's like, oh, your amp has to have this kind of vacuum tube in it, or your guitar has to have this kind of pickups. And there are people on the internet that you would call a cork sniffer, and the reason
they're all over Reddit.
Yeah, and they're the name comes from people who don't drink wine because they like the taste or enjoy wine. They're people who maybe pop the cork and give it a smell. Oh yes, just a jazzy bouquet smells of
okay.
That's where it comes from.
The fancy kind of I can detect whatever in this wine. Got it.
Exactly. But anyhow, the Spotify supposedly are about to launch this lossless service soon. Be interesting to see how well it does. I can't see how they can extract any more money for it, because people who want that stuff have probably already gone to Apple Music anyway.
Well, and you could probably, yeah. And like you said, if I don't even have the right equipment, it's not going to make any difference. And I'm not going to go out and buy special equipment for me to pay more money to Spotify to hear it properly.
Yeah, and I would guess that most people could not tell the difference in the way they listen to music.
Yeah, I'll be all right. All right, what's next?
I have one other thing. So, as many people know, or at least you know, Joy, I've been doing Duolingo.
I also do the Duolingo. I was at 446 today days in a row.
And I've tried to learn Swedish because I had an interest in that language. And I've really got a sense of the sentence structure and also some of the keywords and how some of the plurals work and all this kind of stuff. But over the last month or so, I felt I was getting nowhere with it. It was throwing words at me that were not sticking in my brain. And I just didn't feel I was getting any further with it. So as I have a Duolingo Pro subscription, which is until the middle of next year or end of this year or something.
Let his trial run over and now he paid for a year.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. So I am doing the music Duolingo.
Oh, you picked it up. Yay!
The interesting thing is I've always, I don't say prided myself, but I've always thought to myself, I know zero about music theory. But certainly 25 days into this or whatever it is, 10 days into this, I knew more than I thought. But I mean, we're only so far got C, D, E, and F on the keyboard. That's as far as we've got.
I mean, if you could pick out where middle C is on a keyboard, Tim, you're doing better than like 15% of people, I would think.
Yeah, maybe my knowledge in that area is better than I thought, just purely from having played in lots of bands. I don't know.
All you have to do, like 3 fingers down, skip a finger, start middle C. You got a C chord, Tim.
There we are.
I'm sure you know that.
Yeah, and also like the ear training exercises where they play a tune and they want you to show which one it is. I find that incredibly easy because I'm blessed with a very good ear.
Yeah, that was pretty easy for me. I have a bunch of I find it interesting. I've gotten I have a lot of singing apps on my phone that do training just to do different kind of things and practice your pitch and find out where you're at as far as my voice has gotten deeper as I've gotten older. So when I was younger, I was always a soprano one because I had a very high pitched voice. Now I'm almost always finding myself in the mezzo soprano, almost alto area, which I find very interesting. And I know my music teacher used to always tell us that your voice doesn't settle until you're almost 25 to 27. So it is fun. So for those, what I'm getting at, even like what Tim's saying, even if you think you have a good knowledge or you've been doing music for a while, it's fun to do these things and you'll discover different stuff. Phil Reese told me he recently found out he can sing, and what was it he said? I think 4 octaves.
Interesting.
And then I told him, and that's, you know what I mean, incredibly hard. Most people could do 1 to 2, well, 3 if they're lucky. But then I mentioned to him how many Mariah Carey could do, and he was very sad.
Yeah, Mariah Carey with her ridiculous range that only dogs can hear.
On it. But anyway, yes, Tim, I love that for you. Now I kind of want to download the Duolingo music one.
Well, if you have a Duolingo subscription, you can add as many courses as you like. And I dipped into it originally when it launched, but I hadn't really looked at it. But when I gave up on the Swedish thing, I thought, well, let's try the music thing. And so far, it's a lot. I'm finding it pretty easy, but of course, I'm only at the very basics of this course.
Oh, and if anybody wants to know which apps I use Simply Sing and Sing Sharp, if you're interested in any of that.
There we are. For any budding singers in the audience.
Or if you're just bored sitting at home. I want to know how you sing.
There we go. Okay, so let's get into the topic this evening. It's my turn. And let's just say this topic is hot. It's hot property. It's hot stuff.
Is it about heat, hot, fire?
Maybe you got it, Joy. So these are songs which are fire songs. Now, this may be a 2-parter. I don't know. Could be not. You can figure that out for yourself. But these are songs that have fire in the title, or fire as the artist.
Every time he says fire, my brain keeps saying it's Raining Men, and I don't know how that relates.
Well, if it's Raining Men, it would potentially put out the fire, assuming that they were smothering the fire. I don't know.
The firemen are actually coming from the sky, smothering the fire.
Yeah, an interesting fun fact: the Weather Girls, "It's Raining Men" was written by Paul Schaefer. Paul Schaefer being David Letterman's musical director.
Oh, yeah. I've not known that, but I've heard Paul Schaefer has wrote music before.
Yeah,
I
but
just didn't know that song.
he's a prolific songwriter, but he famously wrote "It's Raining Men."
Well, he wanted it to rain men. Hallelujah. Come on, Tim.
Exactly.
All right. What's our first fiery song?
Okay, so I'm going to open this one up with one that we have mentioned before, but I listened to it again recently, and I think it is a sort of a work of genius in some ways. And this is Fallout Boy and their updated version of "We Didn't Start the Fire."
It is. I mean, first of all, I love the original. And then they did a really good job. There was one guy on YouTube. Did you ever see the guy on YouTube who did a version that was like a modern day take on We Didn't Start the Fire, Tim?
Yeah, because I think when this first came out, I think you pointed me in that direction and I found it. But the Fallout Boy version is much better.
Much better. Well, that was just a random guy on YouTube. But I mean, I love Fallout Boy. I grew up with them. So they really can't do anything wrong for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not super familiar with the work of Fallout Boy. I mean, it's sort of an era of music that's somewhat passed me by in some regards. But I think that they were probably the right people to do it, I think.
I just thought it was super interesting. They did a good job with covering the items from like where Billy Joel ended to 2023. Mm-hmm. I think that's about when the song came out, because the way it's kind of written, like it's like, their version says like Captain Planet, A-Rep something, LA Riots, Rodney King. And so they're going through, because I listen to this a lot, so I hear it in my brain. But they're going through from like where Billy Joel ended to modern day times, and they did a really good job at naming all those things.
Yeah, I would recommend people go out and listen to it. In fact, if you're listening to this on Spotify, pause your Spotify right now, find Fallout Boys, We Didn't Start the Fire, and then listen to it and then come back to us, because I think if you're familiar with the Billy Joel original, you'll be very impressed with what Fallout Boy have done.
It even mentions MySpace, so
there we are. See,
yeah. Whatever. There was a trend that was going around on TikTok, Tim, and it was like your teenage dirtbag photos. And so people would show like their modern day photos, and then when they were a teenage dirtbag, to the song Wheatus. And I shared a thing that's like, I can't do this trend because all mine are stuck on MySpace and I can't get them back. Like all my teenage dirtbag photos are on MySpace, and who knows where they're at anymore.
Well, I obsessively back things up, and I wouldn't trust all
my
stuff
to. When I was like 14. Were you backing things up at 14?
No, the internet was not even invented, and I had pictures on paper at 14.
That's why Tim can't do the teenage dirtbag trend. All his are in a photo album at his mom's house.
Well, I have them all. When they moved, they sent them all to me, and I scanned them.
Okay, well, Tim, you should have done the trip. But yeah, it just made me laugh because I saw somebody share a thing saying, I can't do the trend because all of mine are on MySpace. Anyway, I tried to sign into my MySpace once, and I got into it, Tim, like last year. But like all the photos are just like a red X in the corner now. Like they've like gotten rid of them. Any photo you share. I think three of my photos are still there.
I think you need to let that go, Joe. I think MySpace is gone.
I wanted to just see. All right, what's the next song?
All right, next one. This is an artist that we haven't really spoken about too much on the podcast up till now. And this is from the Born in the USA album. This is Bruce Springsteen and I'm on Fire.
Oh, you're right, though. We haven't really done a whole lot of Bruce Springsteen on this podcast, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much a greatest hits fan when it comes to Bruce Springsteen. People are super into Springsteen, and he's one of these legendary performers that does these concerts that are 3+ hours long, and his fans love Springsteen. And, and they'll go and see these concerts and they'll do albums in their entirety. People love the music that he makes and the messages he has. But I don't know, I've never really got into Springsteen. It's more just like, I like 20 hits, and that's enough Springsteen for me.
I like him. I think he's a good artist, but I'm not really nose diving into his music. Now, this song, like a lot of Bruce Springsteen songs, has been used in like 1,000 movies.
Oh,
I feel like he's so much of a movie person.
Yeah, and he's probably reaping the fiscal benefits of that.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, here's a question. What about Bruce Springsteen in the UK, or in England, I guess I should say, because the United Kingdom. But I mean, in England, was Bruce Springsteen like a big thing, or is he more of an American thing?
He's more of an American thing. I think he has greater cultural cachet in this neck of the woods. I mean, people like Springsteen, and he tours there and is successful and sells albums and stuff like that. But I seem to see more Springsteen super fans on this side of the Atlantic.
Well, I mean, his whole thing was born in the USA, but I was just curious if there was any type of like traction. Because sometimes weirdly things like that can pick up in other countries and you don't know why.
Yeah,
So,
it's the kind of thing that could happen where he would be the massive thing in the UK. But I mean, he's big and would probably sell out a stadium, but I don't think he has the same resonance with the UK audience.
well, he's on fire.
Well, that's true.
I was just waiting for a moment that I could slip that in. All right, what's our next song?
Okay, so this is a little bit of a tenuous link, but I wanted to mention this artist because, again, this is an artist we haven't really mentioned before. This is from the album Electric Youth by Debbie Gibson. This is a song, We Can Be Together, but I'm picking up the Campfire mix, which means it's an acoustic version. It was a bonus track, actually originally a bonus track on the cassette of Electric Youth, and then, of course, when you got the CD version, it was a bonus track on the CD. Is this a Debbie Gibson song that you're familiar with?
I've heard it before. I wouldn't say I know it very well. I definitely don't know the Campfire mix version, but here's a question for you. It's a common term. Like when someone names something an acoustic thing, do they call it a Campfire mix, or was that specific to this album? Because I've never really heard anyone. I mean, I get it. You got your guitar out by the campfire, right? But
Yeah.
is that a common music term that I've not really heard?
No, it's not. Because I remember when I got because I think I had the cassette of Electric Youth, and then I won the CD from Woolworths. I remember Woolworths used to have a magazine that promoted their CDs and records and tapes and stuff, and they had a competition in that to win a copy of Electric Youth because I had it on tape, but I wanted the CD of it, and I wrote away, and then 2 months later, a CD comes in the post going, "Congratulations, you won the thing." I was like, "Oh wow!" And then when it came, he had the list on the back, the Campfire mix.
So was there like a Campfire mix of all of the songs on that album or just certain songs?
It's just a handful of the songs. I think it was the singles. The song Electric Youth didn't get one, but it was just like an acoustic-y type version of it, I suppose.
I get what they're saying, Campfire mix. Miley Cyrus had the Backyard Sessions, which is basically the same thing, it was like her with like a few members of a band doing an acoustic like breakdown of different songs. Some of them were her songs, some of them were other people's songs. They were really cool though. If you're like Tim and you've only recently kind of heard Miley Cyrus outside of what you think you know about her, they were actually really cool. I'll see if I could find one of the ones I really like and send it to you, Tim. But she did something very similar. I don't know if it was an album, but it was definitely like a YouTube like channel, different part one, part two, part three.
Yeah. Sort of songs that was important to her or whatever. But what are your thoughts on Debbie Gibson generally?
I love Debbie Gibson. Are you kidding me, Tim? Though I still find it weird that she said she was almost kidnapped by that one guy, Ted Bundy.
No, that's someone completely different. That's Debbie Harry.
You're right. Never mind, everybody. I've remembered my own facts wrong. So Debbie Gibson is one of those people that I forget about. And to be fair, she's gorgeous. Like, have you seen her recently? She looks like she's still 25.
Yeah, I think she's older than me, and she lives in Vegas. And I follow her on Instagram because her kind of exploits I find thoroughly entertaining. And because, over the COVID, she famously was wheeling her wheelie dustbins to the edge of the road. But of course, no one was going out and doing anything. So she'd dress up in stage dresses and full makeup and hair, and then just film a video of her wheeling her trash cans, as we say in this neck of the woods, to the curb. And I don't know, there's something about that was
She's the one who took your trash bin, Tim.
Maybe it was. Maybe I should have looked out and someone with a sparkly short dress, wearing hair and makeup and heels, running off into the distance.
When I think of Debbie Gibson, though, the songs that come to mind are Only in My Dreams, Lost in Your Eyes, Shake Your Love. I always say that, Shake Your Love. That one comes up a lot in my brain. But she's not the one who was almost kidnapped by Ted Bundy, everybody. Wrong Debbie. But Only in My Dreams used to play all the time when I was working at Kroger. It was one of those songs that came on like every other song.
Yeah, I mean, I like the song Electric Youth. I think that's a very good song. The interesting thing about Debbie Gibson is, compared to a lot of pop artists of her generation, is she wrote all those songs.
Yeah, that is true. Because, like her and the people that were going around the shopping malls and things like that in the 80s, as they would say, you don't really think about them writing their own music.
No, I don't think Tiffany wrote any of her songs because
That's exactly what I was going to say, too.
yeah, because Tiffany famously was the one who went around shopping malls doing the singing and promotion and stuff. I think Debbie Gibson maybe got involved in a little bit of that, but Debbie Gibson was always a sort of a step ahead of everyone by the fact that she did write her own songs, and she's still out there getting it done. She's still performing.
She was also on Broadway.
Yeah, 100%.
She was in Les Mis in Greece.
Yeah. I think she was in Greece. I think she was in Greece in London as well.
Probably. I mean, I don't know if she was on Broadway in New York or she was like in an off-Broadway kind of, but I do know she was a Broadway character in Les Mis in Greece. Which, I mean, that in and of itself is true stardom. But yeah, she's just really pretty.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, she is she's older than me, and she still looks fantastic.
Debbie Gibson, if you're listening, we think very highly of you, and I'm glad you didn't get kidnapped by Ted Bundy.
Yeah, well, all of us are happy about that.
Tim's like, nope, different person, Joy. Different fact. Wrong Debbie. Anyway, all right, what's next?
Okay, the next one I have here is by John Parr, and this is from the St. Elmo's Fire soundtrack, and this is the song St. Elmo's Fire, Man in Motion. Are you familiar with that song?
I am very familiar with that song. I'm familiar with the video. This song gets stuck in my head. Gonna be a man in motion. All I need is a pair of wheels. Yeah. I mean, I've never watched the movie. Have you ever watched the movie that this is from?
Do you think I would have watched the film?
I don't know. It's from the 80s, Tim. It's possible. It's possible. I don't even know what the movie was about.
I have no idea.
This is why we need to do your idea of movie reviews. Because for some reason, based off the song, see, and when I think of St. Elmo's Fire, because remember I did that Reds thing where you had to name a song, and this was the song to my montage that I picked to use a good choice and avoiding some of the obvious, songs you was here. But I do imagine a montage when I hear St. Elmo's Fire, because it's so intense and breaking it up very 80s montagey. But what's St. Elmo?
I don't know.
What is St. Elmo? Is it a church? Is it a...
I honestly have no idea.
Out there, it's screaming at us. This is probably some big famous Catholic. And why is it on fire?
I have no idea. As I said, I think this is going to be this will be an offshoot of No Name Music Cast. Tim and Joy review films I've never seen. Just listening to the soundtrack. All
right, I'm Googling it.
What is St. Elmo's Fire?
Well, I can't. We were wrong. I don't find any church named St. Elmo, but there's St. Elmo's Fire is a weather phenomenon in which luminous plasma is created by a cornea, I'm not saying that right, from a rod-like object such as a mask, spear, chimney, or animal horn in an atmospheric electrical field. It has been observed on the leading edges of airplanes, as is the case of the British Airways Flight 009 and by U.S. Air Force pilots. The intensity of the effect, a blue or violet glow around the object, is occupied by a hissing or buzzing sound, and it is perpetual to the strength of the electric field, and therefore noticeable during thunderstorms or volcanic eruptions.
Okay.
And St. Elmo's Fire is named after St. Ermimus of Formia, the patron saint of sailors. And the phenomenon can warn of an imminent lightning strike, which is why sailors would be useful to them, because they would know lightning was coming.
But what's that got to do with a man in motion?
I don't know. But that's what rhymes with encyclopedia says on the internet.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any more information about St. Elmo's Fire, the film, you could even send us a voice memo if you wanted to. Send it to our Facebook page, and we will play it on air where you can tell us what St. Elmo's Fire is.
Maybe he was on a boat and this happened and he had to run really fast to get away from the light. I mean, he can't run very far. He's on a boat. Paddle really fast to get away from the lightning. I don't know, Tim. But that's what St. Elmo's Fire is.
I have nothing. I think, Joy, we should move on to the next song that's about fire, and then we can let the listeners let us know what St. Elmo's Fire, the film, is all about.
One question, though, before you say that. There's also a St. Elmo's Steakhouse, if anybody was wondering. All right, what's next?
Okay, so this one comes from our friends at Earth, Wind and Fire. So that's covering all of your bases there. And
we got all the elements.
Exactly. And this is the song September.
Okay. Well, the most classic, probably Earth, Wind, and Fire song that everybody quotes at the beginning of September. Yeah. Well, the 21st, whatever day of September. What day is it? The 21st? Is it the 21st?
Something like that.
Whatever they say in there. Somebody out there screaming at me because it's probably like the 23rd or something. As we've said many times, the weird thing about Earth, Wind, and Fire is they're one of those bands that's got like 37,000 members.
Yeah, you just worry, or you don't say worry, but you think about the logistics of how does that work fiscally on the road.
It just makes me, I hate to say this, I don't want to buy tickets because you might not know who you're going to get. Like, I know that sounds bad, but no, of course, September is a great song. It's got that cool kind of like beat to it. Like, it's a fun song. Every disco ever, probably since the beginning of time, has put on September, and it's always a crowd pleaser.
Of course, it's been filling the dance floors since the 70s.
Was that ever on your disco list when you were that massive DJ back in your livelihood?
No, not really. I don't know. Somehow, Earth, Wind and Fire was maybe a little too old for the crowds I was playing to. It was more Girls Aloud and ABBA.
So there was no Let's Groove Tonight.
Maybe that might have.
It's a little bit later because I feel like September came out earlier than that song. That song's more 80s.
Yeah, it was more 80s, 90s was my when I was spinning my wheels of steel.
Because we know you were hardcore DJing it by modern day DJ standards of pressing play on the record player.
Let me tell you, Joy, when I was DJing in Moroccan Soul back in the early 2000s, I had 2 CD decks and a microphone. Actually, I didn't have a microphone.
I got 2. Dang it, Tim. Now I'm going to be singing it. Continue.
I had two CD decks and I could crossfade between them. And it was all going on. I used to burn CDRs. I mean, it was such a fantastic time.
Were you matching beats per minute and mixing songs, Tim? Your BPM? No. Dang, you didn't get that far.
No, they weren't like the Pioneer Pro CD decks where you can slow them down and beat match and stuff.
Yeah.
They were just 2 CD decks in a case and you could crossfade between them. They had a mixer and all that kind of stuff.
It cracked me up because, like, sometimes do you ever struggle with you assume people know what you know, and then you learn very quickly they don't always know everything you know. Mm-hmm. So I was on the interwebs, as we are, and there was this little video that was going around, and people were adding their own songs to it, and it was like these dancing penguins. Well, all you had to do was find a song that was at a certain BPM rate, and it was like every song ever. It was like Shania Twain, I Believe in a Thing Called Love. I Believe in a Thing Called Love because it's the same beats per minute. And people were like, oh, so that's what beat matching is. Like, they did not understand the concept of it. And it was weird to me that people were amazed that so many different songs had the same BPM, because I just assume people know that.
Yeah, I mean, there are BPM ranges that, a lot of popular music all has the same, because you want people to dance to it or you want it to have an up-tempo feel. So you're going to match that BPM. I mean, when I make music and random videos and stuff I put on the internet, I mean, BPM doesn't come into it. It's whatever I feel like.
It's just a general term, though. I assumed beats per minute was a common thing that people kind of understood. But it was weird to me seeing that they didn't. And then it was one of those moments where, there's probably plenty of stuff they know that you don't know, Joy. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was just that realization. Like St. Elmo's Fire. But anyway, what's our next song?
Okay. So this one is an absolute classic, and I couldn't have a fire episode without this one. This is by Jefferson Starship, or as there's billed in this instance as the Jefferson Starship. And this is the song Light the Sky on Fire. Now, this is not one of their big Jefferson Airplane, Jefferson Starship songs, but most famously, appearing in the Star Wars Holiday Special.
I've heard it before. Now, what I don't understand is, and we said it before on this, the Jefferson Starship hate. I don't subscribe to it. I don't get it. Why do people hate them so much?
I don't know. I mean, they modernized themselves through the ages. They were Jefferson Airplane, then they were Jefferson Starship, and then they just became Starships. They were moving into the kind of the the age of space transportation.
Yeah. They literally went, well, we're on an airplane, then we're on a spaceship. Now we're just space.
Yeah, now they're in space. I mean, they were around in the 60s and they probably did a lot of psychedelics and they were probably already in space, if we're being honest. But that's a different kind of space, I believe.
That's just spacey in your own head, not actual space. But no, I mean, this is a pretty good song. I've heard it before. It's definitely not a radio hit, though.
No, it's incredibly obscure. And you either have the 7-inch single, which was issued at the time, which advertises the Star Wars Holiday Special, which I have, or you have a greatest hits compilation where it's tacked on the end, which is how I have a copy of it, or now on the Spotify.
I was going to say, or you've just listened to the greatest hits of Jefferson Starship on Spotify and it's come up. That's what Joy's done.
Yeah. As I said, I think it's a great song, but it's mostly because I like it because it's in the Star Wars Holiday Special.
I mean, you had to put it in there for prosperity purposes. For those who don't know, Joy is in the camp of not Star Wars, but that's okay.
Well, I've gone off Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I was there in 1978, early 78, when it hit the UK in the cinemas. I saw it in the theater when it came out. I was 3 years old. And it was very important to me all the way through growing up. And then it got to the first of the Disney remakes, whichever it was, the Last Jedi or whatever it was called. The very first one they came out with, the Force Awakens. That was it.
Okay.
Thoroughly enjoyed that. I didn't care for the prequels at all. I thought they were terrible, but I kind of forgot about that. And the new Disney one comes out. I was like, yeah, this is great. It's got original characters, blah, blah, blah. And then they came out with the second one. I think that one was maybe The Last Jedi. And I saw that in the theaters, and that destroyed everything I loved about Star Wars, and I haven't been able to get back into it since. Apart from the Star Wars Holiday Special, because I love it, because most people say it's absurdly ridiculous and terrible, but I don't know.
That's really, why you love it.
Yeah, it appeals to me now, and we watch that every year at Christmas time.
There you go. Tim's giving you guys the annual traditions in the O'Sullivan house.
There we are. Hannah tolerates it just about.
Or she just zones out while it's playing in the background.
Well, we found a version on YouTube a year or two ago, which has a new scene on the end that we'd never seen before. Because I had a copy which I found on the internet decades ago, but this had been 4K upscaled, and it had an extra scene on the end where all the Wookiees are eating their Life Day feast, and we was like, "Wow, it's a new scene."
After all these years.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right, what's our next song?
Okay, so this is one that you have to do when you're talking about fire songs, and this would be Johnny Cash and Ring of Fire.
Well, that's a classic. I don't think we talked about Johnny Cash too much on this, besides the fact that he was once found, wasn't found guilty, or I don't remember, but they accused him of setting a forest on fire. Remember we had that conversation?
Yeah, I remember that.
Which is ironic because this is a fire episode. And that song may not have been, he might have avoided playing that one for a little while after he found guilty of it. But, I mean, couldn't think of a more classic, right in the middle of his height song.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the realm of Johnny Cash songs. I mean, you got your Folsom Prisons and you got your Ring of Fires. I mean, it's right up there in the top Johnny Cash songs. Actually, I'm going to look on the Spotify because it gives you a list of what the most popular songs are, the top 5. And and it's saying number 1 is Hurt, number 2 is Ring of Fire, number 3 is Highwayman, number 4 is I Walk the Line, and number 5 is Folsom Prison Blues.
I feel like when I think of Johnny Cash, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, I love Jackson, his duet, but I also like with his wife, Junior Carter, but I also think of Ring of Fire and I Walk the Line. Those are probably the first 2 songs that come to mind. Yeah. If I were just mention Johnny Cash. And then I think of that movie where he had the biopic. He had a biopic before anybody else did. You know what I mean? Like he had one back in the day.
Yeah, and was it Joaquin Phoenix played Johnny Cash in that film, and he did a very good job. I actually have seen that film, and it is really good.
that opening scene where like is it his brother or his dad like cuts his hand off or something to show like kind of how tragic his childhood was. I remember they were out like cutting wood or something. Can't remember which family member it was, but I remember watching that and it was just like, wow, what a way to start a movie, you know?
Yeah,
But it was an introduction to like his crazy life.
yeah. There's some very dark moments in that film, but no, that film is highly recommended.
Oh
Even
yeah.
I would recommend that song.
There we go. There's a film me and Tim have actually seen. But yeah, I think if I have to pick a song that I actually listen to, I listen to Jackson the duet a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I feel like that's a popular one for because when I saw that one band, well, I've seen a few local bands that have done like they'll do Jackson and then they'll have somebody come out of the audience and do the other duet. I feel like that's a Southwest Virginia staple thing to do.
Yeah, I've actually played Jackson. I played it with the last band I was in,
Yeah.
and I have a recording of it, and it is horrifically bad because someone from the audience came up and sang the duet
Yeah.
part in it, and it is terrible.
Every once in a while, you'll get somebody who's decent, but sometimes you just get someone screaming the words.
Yeah, it was rough, and I mean it represents an era of my life, and I've heard it a few times, but yeah,
Yeah.
as a technical song, it is not good.
All right, what's next?
Okay, so this is actually music from another film, and again, a film I have never seen.
Oh, great.
But this is a song I used to like when I'm growing up because I had it wasn't a Now That's What I Call Music. It was some kind of hits compilation that I had on a cassette, and it was copied off from another cassette. So I don't even remember what the original one it came from. But, it had a bunch of different songs on it. But it opened with this, and this is Vangelis and Chariots of Fire.
I don't know that I'm familiar with this, Tim. Who's Vangelis?
It goes bam, 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 bam,
Oh,
bam,
I've heard that
bam,
before, but I
bam.
don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's like a synth. It's like Vangelis was like a electronic synth type,
Oh,
classical
okay,
type
that makes
artist.
sense.
And Vangelis does the whole soundtrack of Chariots of Fire because I had that on vinyl that I got from a thrift shop for 50 cents.
So the movie is Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, and I think it's something to do with running or something like that.
See, I assumed it would be like Greek mythology or something. Romans? I don't know. Was it the Greeks or the Romans who had the amphitheater with the chariots, Tim?
I think that's the Romans, I believe.
So
I
Romans?
think.
God, the historical accuracy of this podcast is getting worse and worse as we go. Somebody out there, if there's like a historian who's listening, I'm sorry in advance.
Well, I mean, if you come here for music, you're only going to get 50% of that, to be fair.
It's true. 20% of this episode was Joy trying to figure out what St. Elmo was. All right. Okay. What is our next song? We'll focus on the music, Tim. We got this.
Okay. So this is Pat Benatar and the song All Fired Up.
I mean, I love everything Pat Benatar. She's one of those artists that I feel like is super popular, but I don't feel like she gets her due though. Like you don't really ever hear like her winning like like these lifetime achievement awards or anything like that. Like I don't ever feel like I hear anything about her, but she had so many hits.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think she's more of a US phenomenon than she's a UK phenomenon
That
as well.
could be it.
I mean, obviously she is a US artist, but it's someone that you would sort of maybe hear on the charts or something, and certainly growing up. But you're right, you don't hear a lot about Pat Benatar or the legacy of Pat Benatar.
And see, I mean, she's what, in her 70s now. And I know she's married to Neil, whatever that guy's name is.
Geraldo.
Yes, that guy. And he writes music with her, right? Or does music with her or something like that. But she was kind of an icon in the sense that, I mean, she was pop music, but she was also kind of a rock star. And very early in the 80s, you didn't have a lot of people. I mean, Love is a Battlefield, Hit Me With Your Best Shot, We Belong, All Fired Up. Those are all kind of rock songs in their own right. And it's kind of sad to me you don't hear much about her because I feel like she was iconic. And if you've ever seen her like perform live, she's so cool to watch. I don't know if you ever went on the YouTubes and watched her, but she's a very interesting artist to watch play.
Yeah, I mean, she's a rock icon. I mean, she's a guitar player, singer, songwriter, performer.
That's like she writes her own music.
Things. Yeah. But yeah, it's sadly not someone who seems to get the kudos. I mean, someone like Heart, for example, does, but Pat Benatar, not so much.
Now, I did know that she lived in Virginia for a while, and apparently before she was a singer, she was a bank teller in Virginia, Tim.
Well, I didn't know that.
You're welcome, everybody. Thank you, pop-up music video, for coming in sharp there. Actually, the only reason I know that is because that episode where I did the women in rock, Tim, when I was researching her, that was one of the facts. If you go back and listen, I'm pretty sure I said it in that episode too.
Well, I can tell you, before I was a podcaster and before I was a transatlantic rock star, probably, I also was a bank teller. I used to work for Nationwide Building Society in Hounslow High Street, Trinity Parade, Hounslow.
I was never a bank teller.
Really?
I worked call centers, retail. I even cleaned dog cages at the Humane Society because when you got to make money, you got to make money, Tim.
Sure.
And I'm not above hard labor. But no, I was never a bank teller.
There we are. I
ran a register plenty of times.
Yeah, I had a few retail jobs which I really wasn't enjoying. I became assistant manager at a retail job, and it was the worst, terrible decision I ever made. And I couldn't wait to get out of that disaster.
Crazy!
And,
I thought everybody loved their retail jobs, Tim. I've never heard anybody say that before.
Your standard retail job, whether you work in the register or stocking the shelves, is fine because you get paid the hours you work, and then you go home, and then you come back, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but then when you become a manager, you're all hands on deck 24/7.
Yeah, and I was paid salary, so I did in early for delivery, or in early for cleaners and in late for deliveries. And I mean, I worked out that the people on a Saturday were actually getting paid more than I was.
Well, and the thing about it is, I mean, I worked, you know what I mean? My first HR job was in a store in a retail environment, and those store managers got ran around like crazy people. Like, they just using it. They're probably working upwards of 70 to 80 hours a week. Easily.
Absolutely. And I mean, if that's the kind of environment you enjoy and you thrive on that, I mean, that's great. And you enjoy that.
Wasn't for Tim, though.
Wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me. I mean, I didn't mind the job I had prior, which was just, register and deliveries and stacking shelves and all that kind of stuff.
I worked in the deli.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But as I said, the minute you sort of show a little bit of promise and they make you some kind of manager, I mean, it's just a disaster.
Though I did cut the top of my finger off slicing someone's deli meat once.
Joy, you shouldn't be using. I did
okay. I worked there for 2 years and I only sliced my finger off once. And I had to be like, could you give me a moment? I just had to walk away.
Which means you probably had to shut the entire counter down and sanitize everything.
At least I had to shut the machine down and clean it top to bottom because I was bleeding. And I was too young to mention. I should have told the manager, you know what I mean, Tim? But I was embarrassed that I didn't. That is the same job where I got so many injuries on this job, not related to that stupid slicer, which I don't recommend. I still have a scar, which you guys can't see because this is an audio podcast and Tim can barely see it. I one time went to grab the, the freezer door handles?
Yeah.
Somehow underneath it had gotten sharp. Do you know what I'm talking about? At the end, the end got sharp, sliced all the way down my arm. Then one day I went in and the person before me didn't clean. Dylan, if you listen to this podcast, I know it was you. He didn't clean the fryer. And because he didn't clean the fryer, there was a bunch of backed up grease. And when I went to clean it, guess what happened, Tim? Hot grease all over me.
Oh, crikey.
So anyway, that's why I'm not working there anymore.
The only retail injury I have, which I have to this day, which is on my knuckle here. Again, great if you're listening and not viewing this. We used to get the deliveries before I became a manager. The deliveries, well, this did after I became a manager, but this happened during my pre-manager days. You used to have these big skips on wheels, and you'd load them off the truck, and they were as tall as I was, like a big metal cage on wheels. And I was pulling it through the warehouse doors onto the shop floor because I had to take it somewhere to start unloading it. And the skip jammed my hand between the door frame and the skip, and it went. And it pulled all the skin off on my knuckles. And even to this day, as I said, I still have a scar on my knuckle.
I used to have to do the accident reports because I was the HR manager at Kroger. And let me tell you, man, the grocery store, stuff happens. People, customers and people. The worst one was the one that is Molly Lawson's husband. he put his eye, which... To be fair, Tim, I don't know why he did this. And we'll get back in the music after this story. But I still, to this day, don't understand Adam's logic here. Sorry, Adam. He knows how I feel about this story. You know how the baler, do you know what a baler is, Tim? Mm-hmm. Where you crush the boxes for those who work at a grocery store. You have to wrap it in this wire before the baler. You wrap it in the wire. Well, they were trying to get the wire to wrap. And, you need a few people to do that job. and they're sticking it through the hole. And what does Adam do, Tim? He proceeds to put his eye down where they're sticking this giant metal wire through.
Ooh.
It went straight into his eye. His poor, like, everything was busted and bloody, and it was gross. And I was still looking at him going, Tim, I'm just thinking to myself, Adam, why did you put your eye there? You knew a giant. He goes, I don't know, Joy. It was just one of those things.
Did it heal? Did it heal properly?
Yeah, because thankfully he naturally closed his eyes. So it was mostly above the eye, but it was bruised. It was bloody. He was kind of had a concussion, and he was going to go back to work. And I came in and I was like, absolutely not. Get out of here. I kicked him out of the store. As the HR manager, I was like, you go get checked and get out of my store. But yeah, he was willing to go back to work. And of course, Molly calls me and it's like, what the heck happened? Because she knew I knew. And all Adam did was send her was a picture of the injury, because men, with no explanation or anything. So she calls me going, Joy, what happened?
Goodness me.
All right, back to the music. I guess we have time for like 2 or 3 more songs.
Yeah, we can get 2 or 3 more. So this song is by another artist we've never spoken about on the podcast, and this is the Kings of Leon. And this is
I'm familiar with them, though.
Yeah, the song "Sex on Fire." Now,
this song was everywhere.
Yeah, and this was one of these songs, probably 2010, 2009, something like that. Every cover band in the UK was playing Sex on Fire, me included. I think we played it in Rough Justice, but we certainly played it in the Lee Aaron band, because I was in the Lee Aaron band for a number of years before I moved here. I was there when that band was set up, in fact. I was the original guitar player in that band.
Why was it named after Lee Aaron?
It was because Lee's dad put it together to promote Lee as a drummer. Ah,
okay. We'll leave it at that. I'm just curious why it was named after the drummer.
Yeah, it is an unusual naming, but it had a purpose. But anyhow, so yeah, everyone was playing this song, and it got to a point where it was almost like an ongoing joke that you had Sex on Fire in your set list.
It wasn't just the UK, Tim. Every time you turned on the radio, TV commercials, this song was everywhere here. It was literally everywhere. And it's to the point where I didn't want to hear it anymore. The guy, I don't know who the lead singer of Kings of Leon is, has a really nice high voice. He sounds really good when singing this song. And I think it showcased that well. And that's part of the reason why this, of all their songs, was super popular. And it was kind of catchy, but it was borderline Nickelback sounding to me. So that's where it kind of lost me.
Yeah, well, I can tell you an interesting story about Sex on Fire. So we played with the Lee Aaron band. It was some festival somewhere in Frimley, I think, which is a place in England. Yeah. And it was organized by some church group, I think. They had some church.
And so you guys played Sex on Fire for the
some church tie-in. So we had our set, we played our set, and they wanted an encore. And I think it was somewhere near the beginning of the Lee Aaron band. So we didn't have a huge repertoire, and we played for a couple of hours, but they wanted an encore. So I said to Barry, the singer, I said, we should play Sex on Fire. And he goes, well, you probably shouldn't do it. And I was feeling a little rebellious that day. So I was the one who opened it. So I opened the song. And of course, because I opened it, Lee joins in and the bass player joins in. So we was into the song. And Barry, all the way through the song, said the lyrics, "Your love is on fire." It was like Ed Sullivan in 1958 or something.
That makes me think of, so the church group that I grew up in, we would go on different little adventures. And have you ever been to Carowinds, Tim, in South Carolina? Or do you know what it is? It's that amusement park.
I think I have been there, actually.
It's a big amusement park that's right over the border of North Carolina and South Carolina. So if you've been to Charlotte, it's not very far from there. Yeah. And it's just like the biggest amusement park around here you can go to. Well, one time we went there, they said they had a Christian rock band playing at it, right? And they have like a little coliseum that they held different events. So we went and rode roller coasters, and then we were going to see a Christian rock band. Guess who it was, Tim?
Who was it?
POD.
Oh, fantastic.
So, I mean, I was excited because I'm like, we are. But the leaders of my church group weren't expecting that as the Christian rock band. It was real awkward. The kids were like, yeah, awesome. Because that was right when their hike came out. You know what I mean? Because they only had like 2 songs. So we were excited. And they were B-level artists. But if you watched Fuse in America, you've heard of them.
Sure.
And so it was just really funny because I remember watching all the church, like, like the people who were like our chaperones for the church and stuff, and their eyes are just kind of like looking around, and they wanted to like leave, but they also didn't want to leave because it was awkward because the kids enjoyed it. Do you know what I mean, Tim? And it still sits clear in my mind. So if you're going to take your church group to watch a band, do some research on it. Because to say they were a Christian band is very loose. They're one of those bands that it's a loose connotation.
There we are.
There you go, guys. That's my story.
All right. Well, let's just do two quick more before we close this episode out.
Okay.
Now, I had to include this one, and this would be Jerry Lee Lewis and Great Balls of Fire.
I mean, it's probably the most classic Fire song you could get.
Sure.
Now, with that kind of, I mean, it's known for its Jerry Lee riff at the beginning, of course, and his piano playing. But I can't think of someone, I really don't think, regardless of where you're from, who you are, whether you've lived under a rock, there's not one person who doesn't know Goodness Gracious, Great Balls of Fire.
Yeah. You shake my nerves and you rattle my brains. Too much love drives a man insane.
Oh, what a thrill.
Yeah. And then Goodness Gracious, Great Balls of Fire. I mean, it is iconic. I mean, it's the Killer at his peak. And I mean, it's rock and roll personified.
He invented rock and roll. It's true. And Tim went through the whole history of it. He's very much at the beginning. He's not 100%, but he's very much at the beginning.
Yeah, he's one of those artists. I didn't we lose Jerry Lee Lewis a little while ago?
I think so. I don't know when. Here, let's look it up. Jerry Lee Lewis. Because I think I talked about him in like modern time, and Tim was like, I think he passed away. And I was like, awkward. October 28th, 2022.
Okay, but I mean, I think he was 90 or he was very old.
Let's see. 87.
Yeah, I mean, he lived a full rock and roll lifestyle. I mean, you know, some of the things he did earlier on in his life are probably incredibly questionable, and I don't really want to dwell on that stuff. But you know, he was rock and roll. He was that man.
Well, it says that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1986 to put in perspective how many years he was an artist, and like he probably was born in the 30s.
Yeah, and he was gigging almost up to the end. I think it was only in the last few years of his life he decided that he wasn't going to tour internationally anymore because it was too hard on him. I mean, he made that decision at 84 or something.
I mean, that does seem a little difficult, but look at Dolly. She'll be gigging until she's 107.
Well, look at like Paul McCartney. He recently performed at the Jimmy Buffett tribute in at the Hollywood Bowl, and I think he's 81 or he's 82. And I believe he did Hey Jude, I think.
That doesn't surprise me. I remember when I saw him on the Carpool Karaoke that I liked that he did. I mean, he had to be late 70s, and he was just as spry as ever.
Absolutely. He'll be like Les Paul, who I saw in his 90s. Paul McCartney will go on to some point, and then it will be a very quick decline, and then we'll have to sadly say goodbye to Paul. I don't think there's going to be a point where Paul's going to give up. He will carry on and carry on and carry on, and then he'll just be a whiff, and then he'll be gone.
What it is, if music is your passion and you're still physically able to do it, I don't see why you wouldn't. And I mean, I can't think of somebody more passionate and more talented in music, like all music, than Paul McCartney.
No, absolutely. And one thing, I may have told you this before, one thing that Paul always hated when he was a younger man, he would see what he considered old people, you know, people probably in their 70s and stuff like that, complaining about their aches, complaining about their pains, complaining about their old people problems. And he said to himself, when I'm that age, I'm not going to do that.
Heck, I'm in my 30s, and what am I saying? My knee! There goes my back again.
But I think it's probably that kind of outlook on life that keeps him young.
You know what's the weirdest thing, though, about getting old, Tim? Why is it the older you get, the more pain you get from sleeping in the wrong way? Like, if you're at a certain, I feel like once you hit your 30s, if you sleep the wrong way, Tim, you're going to hurt for the entire day.
Yeah, I've done that. You wake up with a crick in your neck or something.
You're like, how did sleep injure me? You're like, all I did was sleep, and now I'm in pain.
And now look at me.
All right, well, stop complaining. We'll use Paul McCartney's Lesson in Life. What's our next song?
Okay, so I'm going to close the episode out with this song. This is a little bit of an obscure one, but I wanted to mention it anyway. Have you seen the film The Running Man?
No.
It's a film. It's an 80s film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger
Okay.
and Maria Conchitas.
Are they running in it?
Yeah, it's based on a Stephen King novel about a It's about a dystopian future about this game show that has these runners. And,
yes, okay, I know what you're talking about now. I've never watched it.
If you're a criminal, you can go on the show and then redeem yourself, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger exposes the thing that's a complete scam. It's one of these films in the dystopian future, which actually happened in 2021 or something.
That's always so depressing when people say that. Or like when they were like, if that 70s show was on today, Tim would be talking about like the 90s.
Yeah, exactly that thing. So so this is the song, the Fireball intro. So in the film The Running Man, they have these stalkers, and the stalkers are the one who try and get the people trying to win the game. And one of them is called Fireball. So this is the Fireball intro. Interestingly enough, the whole soundtrack was done by Harold Faltermeyer. Harold Faltermeyer, you would know as writing this song and performing the song Axel F from Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I've heard Axel F a lot. It's used in different things.
Yeah. That's a Harold Faltermeyer song.
Well, there you go, guys. I've heard of that movie. Like, I've seen snippets of the movie you're talking about. Does that make sense to like in culture references? But I don't think I've ever actually seen it.
Yeah, well, I highly recommend. This is a rare film recommendation. I recommend that you go and see The Running Man. Also, the choreography. There's like dancing scenes when the show in the film is going on, and they were done by Paula Abdul.
Well, I mean, I love a good Paula Abdul. She is so active on TikTok, by the way, Tim. Like, she's constantly doing choreography and videos on TikTok. That's another person who's, I don't know how Paula Abdul is now, but she's got to be in her 60s, right? At least.
I'd imagine so, yeah.
Very active on TikTok to this day.
Well, there you go. Well, that's how we're going to close this episode out. I'm going to ask the question, do you have anything for the people, Joy?
Stay fiery.
There
Bye.
we go. See you later. Bye-bye.